But I knew right away that I spent 1 year right out of college in corporate America. I worked for Hyatt Corporate.
Okay.
Knew that corporate America was not for me. So I knew that, didn't know what an entrepreneur was, but I knew I was not going to be listening to somebody else tell me what to do.
Welcome to the Good Life.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Good Life Visual Audio Podcast. I'm your host, C. Muzan, for tonight. Coach couldn't be here with us. We're sending our thoughts and our prayers with him. He had a family emergency. So we're going to send our thoughts and prayers to Coach. He'll be back next week with us, but tonight he couldn't be. That's okay, guys. Just know, stick around because I got a really special guest that's going to pop in, but we'll save that for a minute, right? Anyway, thank you for everybody that's always been tuning in. As always, we appreciate you. If you have followed us on YouTube or seen us on any other platform, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you're seeing us, thank you so much for continuing to engage with the content. As always, we've just said the reason why we do this podcast, the reason why we have these conversations around health and wealth is because these two fundamental areas in our life, if we can get a good footing on them, a good solid foundation on them, man, our life changes to no end. So that's why we want to continue to have these conversations. Share this video with somebody, like, subscribe, do all of that stuff. And as always, if you're not in the Facebook group, jump in our Facebook group. That's where Kabi and I are giving you more access to us. Every week, we're coming to you with some new conversation, with some new content where we can talk about health and wealth. And inside of the group, we want to hear your questions, right? We want you to drop some questions. We got people asking us a ton of things inside of the group. So join the group, get your questions answered, stay close to the conversations because this is how we design the life that we don't need a break from on the health side and the wealth side. So as always, we appreciate you tuning in and locking in. Today, we got a good one for you. Again, like I said, I have a special guest that's going to be popping on in a minute. But in true Good Life fashion, shout out to Detroit, the good old city of Detroit. We got a special guest. Not today, but we have one today, but we have a special guest coming from Detroit. That's going to be on, I think, in another 2 weeks or so. I don't know. We booked him. And that's going to be a really exciting conversation. If Kabi was here, he would probably talk about his Detroit Lions. I really don't know what's going on with the Lions because who's really paying attention to the Detroit Lions, right? Except for Kabi. But I know you guys aren't. But how about those Eagles? There we go. Those birds. I can throw it in there because he's not here right now. How about those Eagles? Week 1. Get a W, eke out a W. Didn't play the greatest, but hey, it's always good to knock off Pats. And yeah, good stuff happening around. I heard that Keith Lee was out in Detroit, right? Since we're talking to some Detroit stuff, I heard Keith Lee was out in Detroit tasting all the food. You know, if you haven't followed Keith Lee on TikTok, he's a food reviewer and he has just kind of taken food review to the next level. It's called the Keith Lee effect. He's probably somebody else we should get on the show at some point. So Keith, if you're watching this, we've got to have you on the show. But he was out in Detroit. The Keith Lee effect, for those of you that don't know, he would go in, he reviews a restaurant, he eats the food, he checks out the ambiance, talks about the the staff, the customer service, all of that, the hospitality, and he rates it. He sits in his car, right? He sits in his car and he rates it. And he was doing it just in Vegas, and every place that he started to review, people started showing up like lines the next day. People have stories of them going from making, $800 that day to having in 2 days getting to $40,000 in sales or $50,000 in sales. And it was happening all over Vegas. And he just landed in Detroit. And I saw a video on TikTok. Maybe we could post it up here, Ash.
There's
new black-owned food hall here in Detroit. During the grand opening, there were no news or media outlets here. Even though this is the first food hall in the middle of Detroit, I'm here right now and there's 9 restaurants inside this food hall. I got the most popular item from each one. I got it, let's try it, and rate it 1 through 10. In total, we spent $4,221.44. The name of this is What You Want to Eat Food Hall. This in Detroit, and when I say in Detroit, this on 6 Mile. As always, to maintain the integrity of the food review, I have my sister go grab everything for me. So none of these restaurants even know I'm here. I haven't stepped foot out this car. I got one thing from each restaurant. I'm gonna show you what I got, and we're gonna try it and rate it 1 through 10. The first thing we got is deep dish apple pie waffle bites from Life is Sweets. This was $10. Waffle bites, ice cream, caramel. I know starting with dessert is crazy, but I don't want this ice cream to melt. This ice cream is super high quality. This waffle is fluffy. It's some saltiness from the caramel. We starting high, 8.5 out of 10. Next up is Poon's Hibachi Grill. We got a steak, rice, and chicken bowl for $30.86. It is a big portion. Like, this is my hand for scale. It didn't come with any sauces, but from the looks of it, it looks like it's already pre-sauced. Some rice, some eggs, some onions, some steak, some chicken. Ooh, some seasonings. I think this needs a sauce on the side. Preferably for me, a spicy sauce. Not super spicy, but like just a little kick. I forgot to rate it. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Next up is a rib plate with mac and cheese and baked beans from Detroit Wild Pig. This was $21.19. Start with the ribs first. I ain't mad at that at all. Hey. Not only am I not mad at that, that's a for sure you're right. For me, this is an 8.9 out of 10. Baked beans. Hot. Ooh, that's real savory for a baked bean. I feel like baked beans are usually like either really sweet or really salty, but that's very savory. And there's really big cuts of vegetables in here. It's different. Is pineapple in here too? Hey, I need some pineapple. Okay, I don't really like the pineapple with the baked beans personally, but I can see this being somebody's cup of tea, just not mine personally. For me, 5 out of 10. Just the mac and cheese. Oh yeah. Only thing is that the cheese sauce is inconsistent. Some of it has a lot of cheese sauce and some of it don't got cheese sauce at all. And the cheese sauce is the best part. That's where all of the seasoning is in my eyes. Oh, if this cheese sauce was spread evenly over this whole thing, this would be in the 9s for me. But as is, 8 out of 10. That cheese sauce is a for sure you're right on. Next up is a chicken and waffle sandwich with loaded potatoes from Heavenly Waffles. This plate was $25. First, we're gonna do the loaded potatoes. It looks like they diced them, but they real soft. They are just as soft as they look, so it's kind of like a mashed potato, but it's really like a chunky mashed potato. It does have flavor, but it's very garlic heavy. The only thing I'm really tasting is. Now, if it was a loaded garlic mashed potato, then I wouldn't be mad. But for a breakfast potato, I'm not a huge fan of that. This is the chicken and waffle sandwich. It's a piece of chicken back here. I'm not a huge fan of that. Those waffles are a little too soft for me to be a sandwich. Like, the waffles by themselves would be really good because they are soft and pillowy. But I think when you put a lot of toppings, it kind of makes it mushy, and I'm a texture person. Again, Russian, and I forgot to rate it. This is a little above average for me. This is a 6 out of 10.
Video of him going to the like food mart. It's got like 9 different restaurants in there in the city of Detroit. It just opened. He goes in, he tries all the food, and then he goes back in and he tips all of the restaurateurs. And then he also leaves money behind for guests to come behind and actually get free food. So just a solid guy. We always like hearing and seeing those types of things. Again, the good life is about good people. And Keith Lee happened to be in Detroit doing some good stuff. So shout out to Detroit. Shout out to Keith Lee and the Keith Lee Effect. We got to have him on the show at some point. And yeah, that'd be dope. That'd be dope. Cool. So on to our show today, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to ask our guests to jump in here. Me and this young lady on the screen had gotten introduced a while back, a little bit over a year ago. And just, you know, when you connect with good people, even though you may not continue to talk every day or every month, you just know when you come across a really, really good person. And when I met Annemarie, like, I was like, oh, she's it, right? Like, she is definitely someone I would continue to build this relationship with. She's so kind and generous, you know, right? She's sharing her network, sharing her contacts. We just had really good conversation. So when I was thinking about people to have on the show that could add to this health and wellness conversation, Annemarie was one of the first people I thought about. So I want you all to welcome on Miss Annemarie Sampson. Annemarie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's so funny as you were saying that, because I could have repeated the same conversation about you. And it's interesting because I'm starting my 38th year in the health and wellness industry, which I sometimes can't believe. I have to pinch myself sometimes. And people ask, how have you been able to stay in this industry so long? And I say the number one thing is creating networks of people that you can refer to. And I mean that absolutely sincerely. And I knew that too from the minute I met you. I loved your energy. I think that you get an intuition or a sense about someone. I sensed right away that you were someone that I could trust. And so that relationship built fast, in particular, when you're talking to someone about something so personal, like their health or their wealth.
That's
Those
right.
are personal, right?
That's
Like
right.
you need to know you can trust them. But I think that we built a connection super fast, and I was able to refer a couple people who I thought would be a really good fit for you right away, just because I knew I could trust you. And I think that speaks a lot for, who you are as a person, and obviously who you are as a business person. So
Right.
thank you for the introduction, but I could have said the same about you.
Absolutely. I appreciate the kind words. But again, that's what happens, right? When you have good energy, you meet good people,
Yeah.
right? Your network's everything. So
Absolutely.
appreciate you jumping the show. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience. Let them know who you are, where you come from, what's lights that fire in your heart and in your mind right now. So
I
give
know.
the people a little intro on you.
Yeah, well, I have to say it's changed a lot, right? So definitely I would say from a career perspective, I am on the pursuit to spread wellness. I believe my mission statement or my why is to leave people in a better place than where I found them. I sometimes think I'm better at that at work than I am at home. I'm embarrassed to say, but sometimes I think I show up as a better version of myself at work than I do at home. But it's something consider myself a work in progress. So it's something I'm working on. So that is definitely something. But yeah, I've spent 38 years in this crazy industry called the health and wellness industry. I started my career in Chicago. And it was different back then, I'm telling you. So first of all, there were no women, there were no health gloves.
Wow.
It was interesting, right? Even the Chicago Bulls didn't have their own training facility. So one of my first gigs was working at an athletic center where NBA basketball players came in to train, and it was people like me and other trainers who are significantly more well known now, working with these NBA athletes and these MLB athletes, and so it was different back then, right? Now you wouldn't see that, right? Because every professional sports team and even college teams have their
Right.
own trainers. So that was certainly eye-opening, for sure. But I knew right away that I spent 1 year right out of college in corporate America. I worked for Hyatt Corporate.
Okay.
Knew that corporate America was not for me. So I knew that, didn't know what an entrepreneur was, but I knew I was not going to be listening to somebody else tell me what to do, which is interesting because I consider myself a learner, but I didn't want someone micromanaging all these thoughts that were going on in my head. And there were a lot. So I opened up one of the first aerobic studios in Chicago.
No way.
Yeah, it was crazy. Right above a place called Goose Island Brewery. So I'm sure everyone's heard of Goose Island beer.
Yeah.
It was nothing. It was a little shop, and my little shop sat above it.
Wow.
Right outside of a place called Caprini Green, which again, people have heard of. And I think people thought, what are you doing down there in Chicago? But I felt right at home. I felt at home in the neighborhood. I felt at home in my job. I loved what I was doing, and my business was a huge success, except for we weren't making any money.
Sounds
It
familiar
was,
to a lot of people out there, I'm sure.
thank you. It was the place to be. It was so energetic. We were way ahead of our time. I met some of the most amazing, incredible people ever. I had no idea how to run a business. and we were bleeding money. So it didn't matter how successful we were, how many people were coming. I couldn't pay the bills. I couldn't stay afloat. So that was a really hard lesson to learn. And that was really when I realized I needed to surround myself with the people who were the best at what they did. And I needed to stay in my lane and do what I was good at. And that was a really hard lesson to learn, but one I'm really glad that I learned young, because I think it's served me well. And when I want to gain knowledge now, like I've pivoted, my career has pivoted so much, but I've gone back and gotten, my yoga trauma certification, my digital wellness certification, my science of nutrition certification. I am definitely a learner. I was just at an Equus therapy training session on Monday, surrounded by these horses, in this, farm setting that, was completely foreign to me, but I'm so intrigued about the mind-body connection, and it's where my business is really going, that I want to learn it all, and I want to learn from the best. So that is kind of a little bit about my career. My personal story is, I keep my personal story a little more guarded. And I do that for a few reasons. Because the minute I share my personal story, I'm also sharing some intimacy about my family members that may not want their story shared.
Understood.
So I'm careful with that.
Understood.
I am married. I do have kids.
Okay.
They're adults. They're all launched with careers, and I think they're figuring life out. So I think that's good.
That's good.
I, had probably what would be considered a, pretty average childhood, but definitely had some childhood trauma that was not talked. I mean, I'm 60 years old. Nobody talked about trauma, whether it was a big T or a little T, was
Right.
not talked about when I was
Right.
growing up.
Right.
So that was interesting. And I think that some of my career choices definitely kind of evolved because of some of that. And I'm really glad that we're in as many things as I think are going on in the world today. I do think we're more capable of allowing someone to have their story. And that was not the case when I was growing up. It was really like sucking up, somebody else always has it worse than you. And, there was never the opportunity just to be able to share your thought or your feeling or your emotion without somebody telling you why you didn't have a right to feel that way.
Right. Man,
so I'm happy about that.
I can imagine, right? We're living in such different times where, again, it's almost applauded that you tell your story, right? It's almost like they, we're championing for people to say, like, speak your truth, right? Like to give out whatever it is that's sitting inside you. So it's crazy, right? Just the transitions of life, like how things change. But man, thank you for that introduction. Like, there's so many places I want to go with you right now. Like, that just gave me so much. I want to take you to a bunch of different places because I'm genuinely curious, right? Kind of like you, I'm a learner, right? So I love having the conversation. My first initial question, why did you jump into the health club space? Like, why that? If there weren't a lot of women there and that really wasn't what was happening right now. I'm getting some feedback. I don't know. Do you hear me?
No, there's no feedback on my end.
Okay, cool. I was getting a little feedback on my side. But what caused you to jump in there? Like, outside of just wanting to be an entrepreneur, why the health club side?
Well, I did study in college, so I think that helped. It's not like I didn't have the background. I did. And I started teaching, which, again, I'm dating myself. I started teaching group exercise, which was then called aerobics. We wore leotards with, leggings and
good old Jane Fonda style, right?
It was Jane Fonda. That was it. So I definitely struggled with, body image, for sure. I didn't, it was a tricky time. And I grew up in a home where, being thin with long hair and, marrying the right rich husband and, looking a certain way and knowing how to eat what forks was super important. I didn't fit into any of that. I didn't look like it. I didn't feel like that. So I definitely had some struggles there, and movement was for sure an escape for me. And it's interesting because while I think the escape was positive, I also want to take a pause and recognize that sometimes the escape, even in something like exercise, can be a negative, right?
Absolutely.
So I want to acknowledge that piece. So I think some of it was, I did feel my best when I was moving and exploring and being creative and being outdoors and, all of that. So I think that was exciting to me. So I think that was probably the big piece. And there was such excitement around it. I don't even know how else to say it, but there was excitement around, there was kind of YMCAs, and then there were these things coming up called these aerobic studios. And it was exciting. It was dance and it was loud and it was nothing I'd ever been exposed to before. And I think that I was just drawn to that. So I think the combination of it gave me, the ability to continue kind of doing something that felt good. It was probably also an escape, both positive and negative. And I knew in my head that it was going to be something. I just didn't know what it was.
Absolutely. What do you think you learned on the business side? Because that's also, right? Like now you're in there and you're bleeding money, but you love it, right? Like you love what you're doing. You're as I call it, the technician, right? Like you enjoy the aerobics part. But what did you learn about business? Like take us through that learning curve.
I learned that I didn't know how to manage people.
Such a huge part to running a business too, right?
Like somebody would say they'd want a raise. I'm like, all right, you can have a raise. A member said they wanted a Coke machine. I'm like, all right, we can get a Coke machine. It was, I did not believe at the time that no was a complete sentence. It's not in my vocabulary. I was a people pleaser for sure. Not good. So that was a big piece of it. And the other piece is I really didn't understand the numbers. I consider I'm conservative fiscally, and I've never been in debt because money scared me. I never wanted to owe anybody anything. So I think it had less to do with money and more about I was never going to be indebted to anybody because that never felt good. But I didn't know how money worked. I mean, I didn't know that, these are the fixed bills and these are the ones that are going to change. And in the summer, my electric bill was 100, but in the winter it was 4,000. I'm like, 4,000. It was just 200. Those were real things. I was never, because again, I studied food and exercise science in college. I never learned any of that stuff.
Right. Where do you learn it? This is my thesis, right? Like when I come and talk to people and I'm like, hey, where did you learn money? Like who taught you this? Like, how did you pick this up? We get our financial habits typically from our parents or our peers, right? Now we have the internet and some resources, but typically that's how we pick it up. So it's whatever we saw in our household, the people around us, that's how we handle money. And then you might luck up and get around some good people, go to a good school, right? Whatever the case is, you get around some people and they teach you some things. Outside of that, nobody's teaching us. So if you didn't have entrepreneurs in your family, if you didn't have people that were running businesses, like how would you have known? That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. So I'm glad you found out. I'm sure it hurt that way, right? Because it never feels good, but I'm sure that taught you so much about what to do moving forward in becoming an entrepreneur, in how to build a business, or the things that you needed to work on as far as like skill sets of managing people or managing money. Did you wind up hiring someone for the money part or for the leadership management part? Or did you just kind of like figure it out?
No, I went under.
There we go. That's another way to do it, right? That's the other way.
So I ended up selling because the concept and the building itself, the space itself, and the concept were definitely worth something.
Sure.
So I ended up selling to two Major League Baseball players were the invested part. Tony Gwynn, who everybody knows, and Bip Roberts were kind of the investment partners there.
That's cool.
Because the guy, that one of the men that I had met in the industry was their trainer. And again, at the time, remember, these people were hiring us. They were hiring personal trainers. Like, they didn't have trainers at their thing. So he ended up taking over the space, and he and I, again, remained very good friends. His career and business have gone a bunch of different ways because of a bunch of different stuff. But that's what happened. And then I went from there to a big box gym.
Okay.
And that was a really good home for me for a long time, because I could really expand my career as far as both group exercise and personal training, because I didn't have to worry about somebody was cutting me a paycheck.
Sure.
And somebody was managing me. And that actually worked really well for me for a long time. I mean, it really did. It was a great atmosphere. It was a huge club, but felt like family. They had daycare, so my kids could swim and play tennis, and that's where they went to preschool, and they were playing in the gym all day where other kids were sitting in nursery school somewhere. Right. And so that really worked for me. And yeah, so
that's so good to hear that.
Yeah,
that's really, and I think again, our list, like people that are listening to this, like they'll resonate with that, because there's a lot of people that are trying to build a business, but just they don't know how to do it, how to make it happen. They're struggling a bit, and just knowing that, say the business goes under, say, right, you gave it your best shot, you sell it off, whatever happens, and then you transition into a place that actually feels better for you. It's a little bit more in alignment. It doesn't mean you had to go off and like start another gym or do another bigger business. You just had to find that spot for where you needed to be at that moment, and then that moved you forward in life, right?
Yes. Yeah, the pause and the pivot, right? Like the ability to pause and then the ability to pivot, which are two different things, because I think sometimes people pivot without taking the pause. And I think that's where people get into trouble. The other piece is when people pause way too long and they never pivot. Right?
On both sides. I'm sure you see it on both sides, right? Like, both of those things are so important. I'm going to steal that from you, just so you know. I'm going to take that.
Yeah, because it works. Yeah.
That is huge. And it's so, it's necessary for people to understand that there is a pause, right? Like when you are moving into that next season or that next endeavor, there's got to be a pause. There has to be reflection. There has to be you diving deep a bit to figure out like, hey, where am I right now? Right. It's kind of analyzing yourself. And then the pivot of saying, now I know the direction. Now let's go this way, right? So that's huge. To you now, let's move it to current times.
Yeah.
Kind of pivoted into the space you are in now. Talk to me about exactly what you're doing currently before we dive into a couple of the topics, but just give people like kind of the overview of what you're doing.
I'm in a really good season. And it's so funny because when people ask me for my elevator speech, I'm like, I don't have an elevator speech. I am doing so many awesome things. I don't have a 30-second elevator speech. It doesn't work for me.
Right.
And do you know who Joanna Gaines is?
Yeah, she was on the show with her husband, right? They were
the home fixer.
Home fixer, yeah.
Yeah. So like they're a carpenter and a decorator and they own a bakery and they've got a clothing line. I'm like, listen, if Joanna Gaines can do all that, so can I.
That's right. Listen, we got to keep a lot of plates spinning. We got to keep plates spinning.
Thank you. So COVID was a good opportunity for me to pause, because I was not going to train people online. That wasn't going to work for me. And I went back and got a couple of really important certifications. I got a digital wellness certification. That was huge. I knew
What is that, first off? Like,
yeah,
what does that
from,
entail?
from the Digital Wellness Institute. I was the first graduating class from there. We were an international class. I mean, I had people from London. There were people from India. This legit, I'm not making any of this up.
Wow.
People from the US, Canada, Mexico, mostly professionals that realized in both corporate America and in education or wellness that technology was taking its toll, right? It's taking its toll on us physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially. And we need to be able to digitally flourish and learn to live with technology because it's not going away. So it was an incredible opportunity. It was an incredible learning experience. I've met amazing people that I'm connected, like who would have known one of my good friends lives in India.
Wow.
But he and I have become super good friends. He was in my class. He was one of my study mates. Yeah, I met some pretty incredible people. Like when I realized the people I was in class with, it was like, you know, these people who are famous. And I was
Wow.
like, what am I doing here?
It's awesome though. Like
Yeah, but it was
just
great.
imagine. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, just imagine all of you coming together, common goal, common thoughts. Like,
Yeah,
hey, this is a real issue, and we're all gonna tackle it.
yeah.
Like, I would imagine that'd be a great group of people. You know.
Yeah, it was well organized. It was well designed. They're doing incredible things. They've got 2 cohorts a year, so 2 different classes that go through, and you know, then we become part of the alumni, and we stay up to date on information and you know things they're trying to do in regards to managing Facebook and Google and a lot of the stuff that's happening in Washington. That's all being driven out of that organization. So
Wow.
that was an incredible opportunity for me. I went back to do my yoga trauma certification. Again, kind of more focused on, mind, body, more holistic understanding, and then did my science of nutrition, just kind of realizing because of a lot, unfortunately, because of the internet and social media, a lot of misinformation out there around, food, nutrition, weight. So that was a great opportunity for me to, soak it all in, get myself re-educated and relaunch as a wellness coach, mind, body. I coach high school girls cross country. It like literally lights me up. I sometimes say, I can't believe they're paying me to do this. It's amazing. And I'm passionate about our planet. I do a lot of education on sustainability and helping people realize small changes can make a big impact. And I talk a lot about that. I spend a lot of time doing that. Do some work for a couple nonprofits, which has been great.
Keeping those plates spinning. Look at it.
Yeah, I travel. Our kids are located all over the world.
Wow.
So I travel, try to spend time with my husband, who I still love and like.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Wow. So much happening for you. Take this step back, because could be, and again, he couldn't be on the show today, but if he was, I'm sure he would have just lit up by everything you just said, because one of the frameworks that he talks about a bunch is kind of this like 3-pronged area of like breath, food, and movement, right? That's what he talks about all the time. And just, hey, like if we can just focus on these areas, people will be good. And he is also another one that he's right. He is fighting the misinformation out there. He's fighting all of the misinformation that people are hearing. And he's trying to bring it. His tagline is cut the noise, right? Because there's so much noise out there around this wellness, this health space, that we just got to get back to the basics. He talks breath, he talks food, right? He talks movement. So give me your take on those things. I know wherever you want to go with that, but like, what do you see as like really important? What are people missing out there in either any of those areas?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I went and looked at my bio. Mine is yoga, breath, fitness, which is so funny.
That's funny. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Wow. I think it's a lot. I think, first of all, we look at it from such a narrow perspective, even though we have access to so much information, our information is still super narrow. And I used to think it was worse in the US, but being part of the Digital Wellness Institute, I realize it's happening everywhere.
Really?
But we think that the US is like the center of the world. And if it's happening here, it's happening everywhere else. Well, it's just not true, right? I mean, so I think that's first and foremost. So when people say things like from an absolute perspective, like this is the nutrition plan you need to be on, or this is the fitness plan you need to be on, like you can go to 100 different countries and they don't ever talk about nutrition or movement, and they're living to 110 and they're perfectly fine.
Right.
So I think that's first and foremost, that we just have to realize there are so many ways to be well and stay well. And we don't have all the solutions. And I think that, let me just pause for a minute. I think that the thing that's changed most for me, and the thing that I wish somebody would have told me, is first of all, you're not broken and you don't need to be fixed.
That's good.
Like, that's it. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. But if you would like to make some lifestyle choices or changes, let's figure out why. Let's figure out, your why. Let's connect to your values, your why, and then let's figure out a plan that's going to work for you.
Absolutely.
Because it's so unique and it's so individually driven that, we can't have these broad scoped conversations. We have to be able to shut out the noise, as your business partner or your partner has so eloquently said, like, clear the clutter, like take the pause. One of my favorite things is when people say, I'm going to go do some research. And my response back to them every time, and I'm not being a snot, I'm like, Google is a search engine. It is not a research engine. It's a search engine. You're searching. Right. I mean, but if you want to continue searching, keep doing that. But that's not research. It's searching. They're two completely different things. So I think it's hard. I'm telling you, I don't know if you feel it as much in the finance industry, and maybe you do.
A bit.
But the health and wellness industry, we're struggling.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head with those like absolutes. Like people just, there's, and again, Kabi has said this on the show, like, don't eat meat, only eat meat, right? Like, like only work out here, right? Like, it's just all these like extremes of either side. And the people that are saying them are saying like, this is the only way. And people are so confused of what to do. Like, so again, people just need some guidance. And we have a running kind of joke here that when we answer questions about these topics, it's always, it depends, right? It depends.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know. Like, we have to talk one-on-one because it depends,
Exactly right. Right. And there's also, we're not like one hashtag or one, famous quote away from finding our way to well-being. I mean, I think that's so important to understand.
Yeah.
And is out there as well-being is, in particular, mental, social, emotional well-being. Mm-hmm. People think it's a hashtag fix, and it's just not the way it works. Right. I think that's important to understand. And if you kind of go back to, again, when you're looking at science and research, there's so much data that points to the more choices we have, the less likely we are to make a decision. Yeah. So that when there's so much noise out there, we cannot possibly make a decision because there's too many choices.
And that's what's happening. Information overload. People are just analysis paralysis. They're just sitting in the same spot. They don't know what to do. That happens on the health side. That happens on the money side too, right? Yeah, sure. Again, there's a bunch out there. We got, the holy grail of Dave Ramsey, right? Oh. Who's just like everyone knows, and he's either right loved and revered, and you can't say anything about him, or right, you go the other direction. right? And then
So
all these,
true.
yeah, it's just true, right? And then you got all these other little nuances. Now you got the Instagrams and TikTok, the, you know, the financial gurus popping up and saying,
Yeah.
this is
Maybe
this.
it's everywhere.
It is. It is. That's why we align so much and with the shows, because like we really do have to cut the noise in all of these areas. There's so much information. There's so much going on. People are lost. People are
Yeah,
lost. They have no idea how to navigate this. My next thought was, because now you work with girls, young girls, like, you know, doing cross country. What are you seeing from their side? Like, what are they dealing with? What's the teenage girl dealing with in the wellness space?
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm going to be honest with you. And body image and social comparison, and it is alive, it is real. And listen, am I going to tell you? I mean, I started this whole thing by saying I grew up, you know, being ashamed of who I was and what I looked like. But the difference was I was able to go home and I was able to go outside and sit in my tree and, you know, either be alone or go hang out with a friend or whatever that was. And I wasn't bombarded 24/7 by these images and comparing yourself to what friends are doing or not doing and what other people look like and, you know, how other athletes are performing. It's exhausting, to be honest with you. And these kids are exhausted. Everything is commodified and monetized, and, you know, how fast did you run? What was your grade? How many schools? Do you know that these kids are applying to 10 to 15 colleges?
What?
This is what I'm saying. First of all, think about the expense of that.
Exactly.
Like, let's just go there. And then the amount of pressure of writing these essays and turning in these applications. I mean, and you can't talk to them about just applying to 2 or 3 because everyone's applying to 10 to 15.
And who's pushing? Is this parents? Is this the school? What's who's driving this?
I think it's society. I think it's parents. I think it's a school. Yeah, I think it's all of it. So they're under, I think, a lot more social pressure than we ever were. You know, if you decide that you're going to stay in on a Saturday night, you know, if I stayed in on a Saturday night when I was in sophomore in high school, nobody would have known. But now everyone knows. They ping each other. They know where they're at. They know, I mean, they know so much information about each other.
They got their Snapchat location. And
yeah, all of it.
Yeah,
it's scary. And yeah, you know,
how do those things work? I mean, you have a digital wellness certification and you're working with youth that are getting bombarded from a digital perspective. How do we bridge those? Like what needs to happen on that side to really make an impact?
It's a lot of education. And, you know, I've got a couple different presentations out there. I've got one for, you know, middle school age. I don't talk to younger kids. It's just not my audience. And then I've got one specifically for high school students. And we talk about, you know, again, technology is not going away. Right. So if I don't know how much you know about addiction treatment, but if you're treating an addict with, you know, who struggles with porn or alcohol or cigarettes, you take that away. But when you're talking about addiction to something like food or technology, these things aren't going away. So the treatment plan is significantly different. We need to learn how to flourish with them, right? We need to be able to eat to survive, and we need to be able to use technology because it's not going anywhere. Right. So establishing healthy relationships with technology, with social media, they need to be conversations that are had. But I'll tell you, Chris, if I was going to be really honest, my kids did not struggle as much. And my kids, by the way, are in their late 20s, early 30s. I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have a home computer. So I wasn't connected 24. We had one TV. So I wasn't connected 24/7. Kids that are growing up now, their parents are as connected as they are. You know, they go to the dinner table and they're texting their boss or, emailing a friend, or maybe that's the reverse. And parents are sharing so much private information about their kids. My son Sammy just, hit a home run with the All-Stars, and he just got an A on his geometry test at Star Middle School. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, you have given more information about your kid, first of all, to perfect strangers. But not to mention the fact, what if little Tommy next week doesn't want to play baseball or be a straight? You've already told the world who he is.
Who he is, yeah.
He doesn't get to decide who he is. I wonder, how are parents not thinking about that?
That's a big one. That's a big one. And I know, I may be guilty. We fall into that trap of sharing a lot of things on social media. We share things about our personal life, share things about our family, right? We have a 6-year-old daughter, right? So we share things about her. So we fall into that exact same thing. And again, I think it's just this our society just, I don't know. I don't know if I could put my finger on it, why we feel like this is now the norm. Maybe it's just because we see it all the time, or right, we're watching other people's kids and right, all types of stuff happening. So we just feel like we want to share a part of that kind of, keeping up with the Joneses. I'm not really sure what it is, but you bring up a great point that I think we just need to be more mindful about it.
Yeah. And the term is sharenting.
Sharenting. Wow.
Overshare. And when you talk to kids, I do a lot of outtake interviews, and kids will tell you they are bothered by what their parents share about them online.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Because it's not their story anymore, right? It's somebody else's story.
It's how the parent is viewing them and shaping them and presenting them to the world, so they don't get their own voice. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's a perfect solution, but I know there needs to be the conversation, and there has to be a start to the solution, right? I think people have to be open to having the conversation. And listen, it's hard. You're the first generations to really be parenting with technology, but these kids that are growing up with this technology, it was a lot for them.
Imagine. Well, it's definitely an area we're going to continue to be mindful of, and I'm glad we could talk about it here, because that just gave me something that now I can kind of take back and chew on a bit and say, hey, what can we do to make sure that we're not falling into that same trap? So pivoting a second, talk yoga. We've never talked yoga on the show, but I know how important this is. Right. And you went through yoga and trauma therapy.
Yeah, I've been through a few yoga certifications. Yeah. So my 200 yoga, prenatal yoga, a yoga for athletes, and then I did a yoga and trauma certification. So I think I have 4 different yoga certifications now. And
these are all different, basis. Take someone that's never done yoga, has heard the word, obviously.
Yeah.
Knows what down dog, I don't know, some random position, right? Yeah. But I've never really done it. What are the benefits?
Yeah, so the practice of yoga, which is what your colleague already talks about, is breath. So that's what yoga is. It's connection to breath. That's all it is. Within the practice of yoga, it's an ancient, practice. It's been around for thousands of years. And there's different disciplines within yoga, but they're all centered around being grounded, being where your feet are, and the focus of the breath. Inhaling what we need, exhaling what we no longer need. You're staying present, staying grounded. It's not about a shape, for sure. It's not about, what you look like. It's not about yoga and goats. That's kind of, those things are fun, but kind of not what it is. Yeah. You could walk into a yoga class and you could lay on your mat for the entire hour, and you will have practiced yoga. Yoga is really just about honoring self and showing up for you. And the benefits, actually, from a scientific perspective, are completely vast. And I think they're surprising to people. They actually can lower stress. They can lower cholesterol, lower blood pressure.
Wow.
It can help people sleep better. It can also give people more energy. It helps with circulation. It helps with joint health. And then it is, from a strength perspective, it is a strength building movement-based pattern too, because once you do get into positions, it does require strength. And depending on the yoga you practice, there can also be some cardiovascular benefits. Obviously, reducing blood pressure and helping control cholesterol and lowering heart rate, but there are some things where when you're moving in the middle of a sequence, you can actually get your heart rate elevated too. So a vast number of benefits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Digestion. I don't know if I said that, but it helps with digestion too.
You didn't say that, but again, it makes sense. And it makes sense again how all of the things that people are trying to fix in their health life, right? Or just address can be done so simply through a few things, right? Very similar to what you're saying on the breath side. We talk the same thing about food, right? Eating things that are giving you energy, right? Things that are closer to the sun or closer to the source, right? Like just the things that your body needs. Same thing will happen when you move your body more. This past, so we did a small like challenge, me, myself, Kabi, and we had a friend in there. And for July and August, we're doing 10,000 to 20,000 steps a day, right? Just walking, just movement, right? Just nothing too strenuous. I think could be moved up to like running and stuff and biking, but like that's him, right? He can stay on that side. But for us, yeah, let coach go do that. But for us, we were sticking to the walks, right? Like, and I felt in such good alignment over these past 2 months just by getting outside and spending that, like, honestly, 2 hours walking. Right. And it was so simple. I lost some weight. I wasn't doing it for that reason, but right. Some weight falls off. Digestion is good, right? Like body feels regular. It's just, there are so many things from these just simple things to put in. And I think that's always the message that we try to get to people. It's like, you don't have to overcomplicate this.
Completely.
Right. Society's trying to complicate it for us. Let's get it back to the simplistic form of breath, food, movement, yoga, right? Like, let's just get back to those things. And I think that's really the blueprint.
Amen. Yeah. Well, less can be more sometimes, right?
So true. So true. So true. So as we wrap, it's been fun. Tell the people what you have going on, because I know you said coming up October 1st, you're holding an initiative. Tell the people what this is about and what you're trying to do, Annemarie.
Yeah, so we're excited. We are doing a lifestyle, program initiative. I love that word. I'm trying to stay away from the word challenge. I don't love that word. So initiative, that's what I'm going to take your word. So basically around nutrition, so fuel, so a 6-week program, reset, reintroduce, real life. So again, the point is just to connect people to, what it is that they want. So one of the things we're doing before the program starts is I'm going to hold one-on-one consultations with anybody that's interested, free of charge. It's normally $115. And definitely connecting people to their why, figuring out their values. It's something I do with all of my clients before we start a fitness journey or a nutrition journey. Because if someone doesn't know why they're starting something, it is really hard to stay on track, right? I mean, I'm sure even with that 30-day or 60-day challenge that you did, you knew why you were doing it. Because if you didn't, it's really hard to stay motivated to get up and to do it the next day. And the whole goal with these 6 weeks is to create sustainable habits that people can bring with them. So that's, I think, one of the things that I really want. The problem with the D word, which I don't really use, which is the diet word, is that it's not sustainable. people don't stick with it because I think a lot of times it's not even that they're hard or they don't work or they're inconvenient or they're expensive. I think the biggest reason is people don't know why they're doing it.
Absolutely.
So,
1,000%
so that's
right.
what
Like,
we're doing.
that's awesome. How do people get in touch with you? How do people find out about this initiative? Where can you take them? Where can they find it?
Yeah, so sustainablelife.live is my Instagram handle. It's also my website. So those are probably the easiest places to get in touch with me. If you send me a message or put a message on my website or on Instagram, I'm pretty good at responding to people. It usually takes me about 24 hours. I try to practice good digital hygiene. So I'm not connected to my phone 24/7, but I respond typically within 24 hours.
That's awesome. We'll link that up here in the description. And everybody that's listening, like reach out to Annemarie. Obviously, you hear, right, the same things we talk about here on The Good Life, the same passions around, right, just wellness, just cutting out the noise, just really locking into the simplicity of what we need to do in order to, feel good at the end of the day, whether it's longevity, whether it's just, right, being more productive or whatever it is in what you're trying to feel. She's definitely a champion of this area. So reach out, spend some time, send some people her way. She's more than happy to have a conversation with you. So DM her, shoot her a message. She is part of the Good Life family now. And Annemarie, we appreciate you jumping on. We got to have you back when Kabi is here, so you get the full conversation. I'm sure like you two would carry the conversation because you're right on the same page.
This was awesome.
But
you
yes,
did. And I want to say too, why I just want to put in one other thing. If anyone's ever interested in going through a digital wellness program, it's the information is super digestible. It's easy to follow. I think everyone walks away with 1 or 2 tips that make sense. I'm happy to do that for any organization or even for a family. So you can contact me for that too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And again, we'll link it all up here in the description, but feel free to reach out. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We really appreciate it. As always, again, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Jump in our Facebook group because that's where we're diving in and having some more of those in-depth conversations. So we don't have to say it depends. We can talk to you one-on-one and really help you down this path to getting your health and your wealth in the right places. So until next time, guys, we're going to sign off. Take care. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Good Life.
If you enjoy this episode, please take a moment to subscribe and like our channel.
If you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, please leave us a comment down below.
If you're listening to the podcast audio version, we appreciate you just as much. Thank you for tuning into The Good Life Show.
We believe that everyone has the potential to live their best life, and we hope our show helps you get that one step closer to achieving your goal.
If you know someone who would benefit from our show, please share it with them, and thank you for your continued support.
That's it for another week's episode here on The Good Life. We'll see you next week for another inspiring conversation.
Welcome to the Good Life.